What would you do if the person you trusted most walked into your home with a lie so big it changed everything? Here, the truth never whispers. It waits, watches, and strikes when the timing is perfect. These are stories where betrayal hides behind smiles, where love is tested inside families, and where silence becomes the strongest weapon. You'll hear about marriages shattered by secrets, husbands exposed by their own confidence, and moments when the smallest voice reveals what adults try to bury. Every story unfolds slowly, pulling back the curtain on hidden lives, calculated deception, and emotional strength no one expected. There's no screaming here, no chaos, just truth surfacing, reputations collapsing, and consequences arriving with precision. If raw emotions, shocking revelations, and quiet revenge keep you listening until the final word, then this channel is exactly where you belong. The truth did not arrive gently. It was carried into the living room like unwanted luggage, placed down without permission, and expected to be accepted without question. A husband stood near the door, calm and rehearsed, with a woman beside him who wore confidence like armor. A small child clung to her hand, confused but obedient. The explanation followed quickly, almost casually, as if announcing a change in dinner plans instead of the destruction of a marriage. Years of trust collapsed in seconds. The home that once felt safe suddenly felt staged, as though every memory had been quietly edited to hide what had always been there. Late nights at work, sudden business trips, phone calls taken in other rooms, each excuse now revealed as a carefully stacked lie. Control had been the plan. Silence had been the weapon. The belief was simple. Shock would keep questions from forming. The husband spoke of responsibility and honesty, pretending courage while avoiding eye contact. The mistress remained still, watching closely, certain that this moment marked a victory. What neither expected was composure. Pain stayed locked behind steady breathing, while every word was absorbed, every detail noted. The audacity of bringing betrayal directly into the home burned deeper than the affair itself. It was not just infidelity, it was humiliation by design. The child shifted uncomfortably, eyes scanning unfamiliar walls, toys, photographs. Innocence stood in the center of deception, proof that the lies were no longer private. That small presence confirmed what denial had tried to erase. A second life had been built carefully, patiently, and without remorse. Memories surfaced uninvited, promises spoken during quieter years, hands held during moments of vulnerability, vows that once sounded sacred now echoed hollow. The man delivering this revelation had practiced this speech, convinced authority would silence resistance. Control, however, slips the moment truth is fully seen. The most painful realization was not the affair, nor the child, nor even the calculated cruelty. It was understanding that respect had ended long before this confrontation. Love does not arrive with witnesses to announce its replacement. That day marked the end of obedience to lies and the beginning of consequences no apology could undo. Silence became armor the moment everything cracked. Pain surged, sharp and humiliating, yet it stayed contained behind an unshaken expression. The husband mistook calm for weakness, believing shock had erased awareness. Every word spoken that day was carefully stored, every excuse measured against years of quiet inconsistencies. What looked like surrender was observation. Humiliation burned hottest in private moments. The memory of introductions replayed endlessly, the confidence in another woman's posture, the certainty in the husband's voice, the way betrayal was framed as inevitability. That confidence revealed more than intended. Lies always grow careless once they believe victory is guaranteed. Each detail exposed gaps in the story, timelines that did not align, emotions that rang false, rehearsed phrases used too smoothly. Strength did not arrive loudly, it settled in slowly, built from restraint. While the husband continued explaining, justifying, minimizing, attention stayed fixed on patterns long ignored. Late-night absences suddenly had names. Secret accounts suddenly had purposes. The steady erosion of affection was no longer mysterious, it was strategic. Love had been rationed elsewhere. Behind closed doors, resolve replaced disbelief. Tears came quietly, never witnessed, never shared. Pain sharpened perception instead of dulling it. Financial records were revisited. Old messages were re-examined. Casual remarks, once dismissed as stress, revealed themselves as cover. The husband's false narrative depended entirely on being unquestioned. Once scrutiny began, it unraveled quickly. The most shocking discovery was not the affair itself, but the length of deception. Years had been invested in maintaining appearances, while another life grew alongside this one. Every anniversary celebrated with half a heart, every promise made with an exit already planned. Trust had not been broken suddenly, it had been drained slowly, intentionally. Calm composure unsettled the husband. Guilt expects anger, not silence. Control depends on emotional reactions, not quiet calculation. The absence of confrontation created space to move deliberately, to prepare rather than react. Power shifted the moment emotions stopped being visible. By the time questions were finally asked, answers could no longer hide. The husband's confidence faded as facts surfaced. Documents, dates, contradictions impossible to deny. What began as humiliation transformed into clarity. Betrayal lost its sting once truth replaced illusion. Strength does not always shout. Sometimes it watches, waits, and then decides when the truth will speak. The moment that shattered everything did not come from an argument or an accusation. It came from a small, unguarded voice that had no reason to lie. Adults filled the room with tension, carefully choosing words, hiding behind explanations and rehearsed expressions. The husband stood confident, believing authority and age granted protection. That belief lasted only seconds. The child spoke without hesitation, unaware of the weight carried in those words. A simple question slipped out, curious and sincere, cutting through the silence sharper than any confrontation ever could. It referenced places visited, promises overheard, moments remembered too clearly to be denied. No anger lived in that voice, only honesty. That was what made it devastating. Faces shifted instantly. The husband's posture tightened, eyes darting for control that no longer existed. The mistress stiffened, suddenly aware that rehearsed stories had cracks. Adults had agreed to silence, to half-truths, to carefully shaped lies. The child had agreed to nothing. Innocence had preserved details deception failed to erase. Years of secrecy collapsed in that instant. The timelines no longer aligned. Excuses unraveled under the weight of memory. Birthdays missed were named. Lies about work were unintentionally exposed. The child recalled afternoons spent waiting, watching, learning truths never meant to be shared. That honesty did what confrontation never could. It stripped power from manipulation. Emotions surged, raw and overwhelming, yet composure held. There was no need to interrupt. Truth had found its strongest messenger. The husband attempted to redirect, to soften the moment, but every word only deepened the damage. Children do not rehearse lies well, but they remember truth perfectly. What hurt most was realizing how deeply the deception ran. The child had been woven into the secret life, unknowingly turned into evidence. Trust was not just betrayed between adults, it had been gambled with the child's innocence. That realization cut deeper than anger ever could. The room changed after that. Control vanished, authority dissolved. The husband was no longer the one deciding how the story would be told. Silence fell, heavy and final, because nothing remained to explain. The truth had already been spoken by the only voice brave enough to speak it without fear. Sometimes the most powerful revenge arrives without intention, carried by honesty no lie can survive. There was no need to raise a voice when the truth already spoke so clearly. Silence carried more weight than shouting ever could. While the husband waited for an emotional explosion, calm settled instead, steady and deliberate. That calm confused him. He had prepared defenses against anger, not patience. He expected chaos, not calculation. Every secret revealed itself through timing. Bank statements quietly reviewed, messages reread without emotion clouding judgment, dates compared, patterns noticed. What had once been dismissed as forgetfulness or stress now formed a precise map of betrayal. The husband's confidence depended on being confronted too early. Waiting became the advantage. Public dignity was maintained while private evidence accumulated. Friends noticed the distance. Family sensed tension. No explanations were offered. Letting others observe the unraveling without interference allowed conclusions to form naturally. Reputation does not collapse from accusation alone. It collapses when truth aligns with behavior. That alignment was inevitable. The husband attempted control through charm and regret, switching tactics once fear replaced certainty. Apologies surfaced too late, layered with excuses that contradicted documented facts. Lies stacked upon lies until even he struggled to remember which version had been shared with whom. Watching that confusion unfold confirmed the power of restraint. The mistress faded from confidence into discomfort as reality surfaced beyond private walls. Stories no longer matched. Sympathy dissolved. What once felt hidden became obvious. The illusion of a victorious ending disappeared as consequences approached quietly, professionally, permanently. Legal steps followed without drama, papers delivered without confrontation, decisions executed without emotional negotiation. Everything handled with precision, supported by proof rather than passion. The husband realized too late that calm had never meant forgiveness. It had meant preparation. What shattered him most was the absence of spectacle. There were no scenes to rewrite later, no emotional outbursts to weaponize, no behavior to discredit. Only facts stood, undeniable and final. Control slipped away not through force, but through exposure. Watching reputations shift was not satisfying in a dramatic sense. It was sobering. A life built on deception does not implode loudly. It erodes quietly until nothing solid remains. Friends grew distant, trust evaporated, respect vanished. The ending did not come with shouting or tears. It arrived with signatures, silence, and consequences that could not be undone. Sometimes, the strongest revenge is simply letting the truth finish what lies began. If this story kept you thinking, you're not alone. Every experience shared here carries pain, strength, and a truth that refuses to stay hidden. If you felt the silence speak louder than anger, if dignity felt more powerful than revenge, then stay with this channel. Tap like if the truth mattered. Subscribe if you believe the calm voice often holds the sharpest edge. And turn on notifications so you never miss the moment when a lie finally collapses. Until the next story, remember, patience reveals everything.